My parents had two constant arguments while they were driving over either how fast my father was going or how much gas was left in the tank. My father had a standard defense for either one of these. It was always, that's because you're looking at it from an angle. If you were over here, it looks from where you're sitting, it looks like I'm doing 90 on empty. But that's because you're over there. If you were over here, you'd know I'm in the driveway with a full tank.
The world, as we see it, has been and always will be painted by our individual beliefs, experiences, and environment. My world is not the same as your world. What I see is not necessarily what you see. Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon explores this phenomenon. The film focuses on a trial where a certain crime has been committed, but there's a catch. We are told about the events from the perspectives of four parties involved: the accused, the victim, the other victim, and a witness. The crime in question being a murder, or is it? And the events leading up to said murder, well, that's where it gets complicated. What ends up happening is that we as the audience are presented with four completely different stories. In one story, there's a noble duel. In the other, there's a crappy duel. In one story, there's a slow solution. In the other, she wanted it.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell.
But they all follow the same series of events. Which story is true? Is any of them true? When given different perspectives, reality itself seems to change. Victorious is one of the many entries in the Greek tragedy that is children's media. It was developed by the one called Dan and aired on Nickelodeon from 2010 to 2014. It follows narcissist Tori as she sings her way into an art school in Hollywood, California, where she proceeds to bully her classmates, destroy relationships, and sing some more. The show aired on Nickelodeon when I was tiny, but I was too busy watching the filth on Disney Channel to pay this one any attention. My rationale, if I remember correctly, is that Nickelodeon shows seem too girly. Alright. Now, being the media expert that I am, I've taken it upon myself to explore some of the gaps I've left in my consumption, and as I'm beginning to realize, the filth on Nickelodeon was not all that much better. The way I see it, media made for children, in general, is actually quite sordid. It only seems to be getting worse. By sordid, I'm not just speaking as someone outside of the obvious demographics saying all the shows are mid, but what I am saying is that they seem insulting, exploitative, and just a little bit more than slightly egregious. We've let kids on the internet too, where even the more developed mind is reduced to oatmeal porridge. I've had the idea of doing an investigation into children's media for a while, but for now, let's take a look at Hollywood arts and the tyrannical reign of Tori Vega. Alright, where to start? Why am I, a semi-grown man, in this day and age, sitting down and watching Victorious? I asked myself the same question at the top of every episode. As Tori echoed my thoughts, here I am, once again. There are a few reasons, actually. I mentioned before that I've taken it upon myself to fill some of those gaps, investigate genres and media that I'm alien to and or am fascinated in. That, and I'm always willing to watch or read anything if given any reason. Media literacy does not build itself. The reason for this one came in the form of a very nice CJDX video that, in hindsight, definitely affected how I viewed this show going in, and a 5-hour-long Quentin Reviews video that had been haunting my recommended tab for years. also spoilers. Both of these are way better researched, edited, and generally more good than what you are watching right now. Feel free to check them out after you've heard my little nonsense. Now, without further ado, let's delve. Upon starting Victorious, I was more than a little shocked by what I saw. I mean, there is a lot to talk about when it comes to Victorious, like surprisingly a lot. The show was some issues, man. I'm not even talking about the entertainment value. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit from that end. I mean, it's stupid. The humor is stupid. The jokes are dumb. The writing is, well, we'll get to that in a second. But from an entertainment standpoint, the show is still not great. But I did like that part. I like stupid life humor. So mate, as for what about Victorious threw me off, though, well, I'm sure most people already know about the Dan Schneiderisms. Lots of very uncomfortable scenes. Like, dude, in the first season, they had this little anime beach episode, which I'm pretty sure only existed to show off some skin. Buddy, jeez, man. The feet, my god. It's uncanny how many related plots there were. Like, there's also a lot of very uncomfortable fetish stuff. I actually had to look away from the gross stuff. However, what I'd like to explore in detail here is another issue, which is related but representative of what I think is a much larger problem. If you haven't seen the show, let me give you a brief rundown of the first episode. If you haven't seen it in a while, let me refresh your memory. However, let me preface this by saying that this is the description based on how I saw it. Feel free to see it for yourself and take of it what you will. Of course, this also goes for the rest of this essay. Form your own opinion on all that.
Tori enters the scene. Her annoying older sister, who is going to an art school despite being evidently devoid of any talent, is preparing for some performance. It is a singing performance. Tori, who can actually sing, but doesn't attend this art school for some other unexplained reason, has been watching her rehearse and knows the song by heart. This will be important. Just before the show, some nonsense comes up, and the sister, Gina Vega, develops some sort of morbid obesity in her tongue. Needless to say, she can't sing. What are we gonna do? Some token black friend, who is him again, uses big brain and suggests that Tori, who again can actually sing, takes Trina's place. She reluctantly does. The day is saved! Whoopee! Hollywood Arts accepts her on the spot. The next day, she goes to school and we meet the rest of the cast, what we'll get to momentarily. The important part of the episode now leans on when she bumps into a hot guy with hair, as well as drinks on his shirt, starts wiping him off. When his girlfriend, who is understandably upset, calls her off and antagonizes her for the rest of the episode. Now, is she right to bully her and make her perform fetish stuff in front of the class? Probably not. But how Tori decides to respond to this was a bit shocking.
For a kid show, at least.
The next day, they're in the same acting class, and Tori and Bean Girl do an acting scene. They do battle in front of the entire class, along with Hot Guy Has Hair because, of course, the form of a word association exercise. Tori defeats Bean Girl and proceeds to make out with hair in front of her and the entire class, while the canned audience goes wild. Look at her! She's the
I was a bit confused at this trend of events and how they were being presented. It felt surreal, like this Tori girl was being a straight up villain, and every piece of storytelling was being used to praise her. She enters the show by stealing her sister's big moment bigly.
This girl doesn't know if she's good enough to go to school here. What do you people think?
And making out with another girl's man.
Kiss me.
Let's do it.
Like, dude, bro, the world is being handed to her on a plate and she's asking for seconds. What really stood out to me was how the show is blatantly using your standard sitcom tropes to justify this narcissist fantasy. Like, there's enough plausible deniability to make a person less versed with these tropes allow it to slide. But I'm watching this and I'm going like, that's a Meetcute, right? That's a Meetcute. The show justifies it as a genuine accident, and the man's lady is just going crazy, but that was by all definition a Meetcute. And the ending of the episode confirms it. They use the Meetcute and the mean girl trope to justify Tori making out with another girl's man.
I'm not doing something bad by making out with her boyfriend. Because she's mean. She hates me. She's a bully. She deserves this. And I deserve him.
Am I crazy? And the way how they...
We are looking at how to pronounce the name of this Latin phrase. How do you say it? Deus ex machina. Deus ex machina.
Her older sister, who everyone hates for some reason, into having her special moment stolen from her? Why was nobody talking about this? This was at least before I started actively looking for commentary about the show online, and thankfully most people, at least over the age of 15 I suppose, agree that Tori is less than a wonderful person. Unfortunately though, these people, like myself, were not necessarily the demographic of the show. Some of the best fiction is told from the perspective of less than exemplary characters. I should know, I have a long list of characters in movies who are literally me. The anti-hero trope is one in fiction that's been growing in popularity for the past, say, 50 or so years. It can be seen in literature, film, and most recently television, and it's for good reason. The anti-hero can be seen as a direct response to the narrative of heroes and villains, in other words, good and bad people. These unsavory characters are humanized to some extent, and if done well, this trope can offer some solid critiques of parts of our culture and systems in place that allow for these villains to be created. Think about it like the difference between social commentary in a cop show versus a crime show. Your CSI or NCIS or whatever will look at the adventures of those who wrangle up the criminals, the bad guys. Whereas a show like Breaking Bad or Gabagool will show you what builds the criminal. When we are introduced to the world of a less than morally upstanding character, our traditional perspectives on morality and some parts of our culture and systems that we take for granted are challenged.
If you want to talk about guns, why is it that there's a gun shop on almost every corner in this community?
Why?
Tell you why. For the same reason that there's a liquor store on almost every corner in the black community. Why? They want us to kill ourselves. You go out to Beverly Hills, you don't see that shit. But they want us to kill ourselves. Yeah, the best way you can destroy a people, you take away their ability to reproduce themselves.
Yeah.
Who is it that's dying out here on these streets every night? Y'all.
Yeah.
This is the true strength of the trope done well. Though it is true that these particular stories might also serve as some sort of escapism, where the audience, typically male, looks up to these characters, which isn't necessarily good. The writing may tell the story of a victim of circumstance falling into crime and ultimately meeting their demise because of it, though on the screen, this may translate as a grand heroic action adventure where the protagonist rises through the system and becomes powerful, meeting a tragic but epic fall. Art as entertainment is a whole other topic I want to get into eventually, but let's stick on track for now. It does take skill to pull off, and even still, the creator ultimately has so much control over what people take from it. I know I've gained good from some of these stories, but I'd be lying if I said some didn't feel like a fun ride. The trope would make its way to the sitcom world in the 90s with anti-sitcoms like The Simpsons and Seinfeld which would deliberately annihilate the established cozy sitcom tropes with their overtly antagonistic and otherwise flawed characters. Cool. But these shows are always aware that the characters are flawed, and they're usually punished for it. That and these shows weren't made for kids.
I love these nature shows. I'll watch any kind of nature show, and it's amazing how you can always relate to whatever they're talking about. You know, like you're watching the African dung beetle, and you're going, "Boy, his life is a lot like mine." And you always root for whichever animal is the star of the show that week. Like if it's the antelope, and there's a lion chasing the antelope, you go, "Run, antelope, run! Use your speed, get away!" Right? The next week it's the lion, and then you go, "Get the antelope, eat him, bite his ass, trap him, don't let him use his speed."
Tori's world is one that genuinely seems to revolve around her. Her name's in the title, the school's all vibrant and colorful, and everyone knows her. She and her friends are seemingly, canonically the only ones that can speak.
You probably never noticed me. I'm one of the quiet kids who sits in the back and just reacts to stuff. You're a shrugger?
With maybe 2 or 3 exceptions. They star on all the plays, sing all the songs, yada yada yada. Tori's a singer. She sings, guys. What does she sing? She wants to be a pop star, and she's gonna do it, guys. She's gonna be victorious! This has to be true because half the conflict we see in the show is pretty much solved by her singing. And she always has to be the center of attention. She's everybody's fascination. Sister's birthday is coming up and you couldn't give her a gift? Sing! We went way over budget with a restaurant meal? Sing! Nepotist owner of karaoke club only lets his daughters win? Sing! She could solve world hunger by singing! Look at them dance, look at her go! You don't have to be afraid to put your... Let's look at her friends. They're so weird. First up, we have the black one. He does music stuff and... He's black. He's black, guys. He has a black friend. She's so accepting. He's in shows too. He's really good at creating music and songwriting and dancing. Sure, doesn't really care about too much. But have you noticed we have a black character, guys? Whoopee, we filled the quota, guys. He's black, guys. He's black. Next up, we have hair. Look at him. He's so hot.
He's got hair.
All the girls like him because
He's got hair.
He's Canadian and. That must mean he likes hockey, right?
He's got hair.
Grown woman also casually flirt with this child because he's so hot and...
He's got hair.
By mentioning that he's hot and he's got hair. Oh yeah.
He's got hair.
His girlfriend, Jade. I mean, she's mean. She's mean to Tori for no reason at all. She's so mean. I'll bet
He's got hair.
doesn't even like her that much.
She's so clingy. Every time a girl or girl flirts with me, she gets so angry. What's your deal? Why don't you like Tori? Just because Tori wormed her way into her friend group and automatically became the leader. That's how things work here. Why don't you get that? Why doesn't she like Tori? Why don't you like Tori?
Not me! Oh yeah, then there's the pet. Cat. How fitting. We're meant to laugh at Cat, isn't she so funny? She's mentally ill. It starts out quite explicitly as bipolar disorder in the first few episodes.
I'm alone! Hey, can you oh my god, you're Tori, right? Uh-huh. You were so awesome in the big showcase. Oh, thanks. My name's Cat. Like the animal. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I love cats. Me too, they're so cute.
Then seemingly becomes an ever-declining... But she's all there, guys. She has some symptoms. It's actually kind of gross. She wants to fit in. She's kind to everyone, even though they call her stupid to her face.
Why doesn't she get it? They only keep her around as a punching bag for their own amusement.
She tries so hard to be kind. Probably out of fear that they'll all drop her once she ceases being amusing to them and becomes a burden. She's probably right. CJ's video elaborates on Kat's case in far more detail, though he focuses more on Ariana Grande's performance, her excellent performance. Check it out. And the thing is, Kat's funny and all, but she actually don't like laughing at people's mental conditions. The lovable idiot trope is one that isn't unheard of in fiction, and while I do have mixed feelings about it overall, they're not always meant to be read as mentally ill so much as simple-minded or naive. In fact, these characters are often the wisest of their cast, though they might appear to be slow when it comes to the day-to-day. That and she low-key sings way better than Tori, but the show doesn't want us to know that. Now, speaking of literally me, let's go to my fellow Afro-having friend Robbie Shapiro, the loser. Robbie, what a creepy little dude. He has a racist puppet he uses to voice his inner thoughts. I do not subscribe to the notion that Rex is sentient. That is stupid. His inner thoughts tend to be more inappropriate.
Whatever it takes, Cupcake.
Reverse.
Maybe you should play a woman who loves to make out with 2-foot tall guys who happen to be me.
Is that what you wanted?
Oh,
Rex?
take me home.
Or just plain offensive.
No, I was thinking something maybe intense, scary. Like Jade?
And also often, these insults tend to be directed at Robbie himself.
You guys be cool.
Him? Be cool?
You're a demon!
You.
Because I don't like to change in front of him. He makes jokes.
Yeah, I do. It says Robbie will never be loved by a woman.
What? That's not true, you know.
The cookie has spoken.
Robbie is a deeply troubled person. It's pretty awkward, but he's also talented and seems to march to the beat of his own drum. The putz.
Get in line, pal. This is Victoria's, not very obvious.
Tori is the only one who's allowed to be seen as special in a good way. Anyone who stands out besides her is just weird. So the show puts him in his place.
We insult him. We laugh at him every chance we get. We beat him down. Hopefully all the abuse and insults pile up, resulting in an absolutely shattered self-esteem and deep sense of self-loathing that will likely take him the air circle from, if ever. It doesn't matter that he's actually multi-talented, creative, and eventually attractive. None of that matters if we beat him down enough.
Or am I just projecting? Of course, there are other characters. There's Tori's older sister Trina, who everyone in this universe, including her own parents, hates for some reason. I mentioned Psychowitz before, one of Tori's many theater teachers. He's a fellow hippie, so I like him, despite his blatant nepotism. Then there's Sinjin. Well, we'll get to him in a second. Then there's the vast world built out of racist caricatures, pedo-adults, NPCs, and the like. It's a wacky little world, and it's hers. However, if you can't already tell, I don't trust it. Reality, as we see it, is filtered through our personal experiences and biases. Nothing we ever see is exactly as we see it. The way we perceive a personal event can be painted differently given our point of view. I spoke about Rashomon earlier. It examines these four perspectives, changing the story while the facts remain. Which one is telling the truth? Are they all telling the truth? Is none of them telling the truth? In life, we all have these individual stories we're playing out. We all have these different soundtracks. The genre is different, the roles we play are different. I'm a hero in some people's story and a villain in others. I'm incredibly privileged in many ways, most of which I take for granted. What I do is sort of want to claw everyone living in a first world country in the face. We all have these completely different experiences. This is where art comes in. The way I see it, probably due to my own individual experiences, is that it is only in art that the gaps between these individual experiences can be bridged. When I say art, I am of course speaking in the most collective sense of the word. Novels, film, television, theater, comic books, music, paintings, essays, all of it. Art serves to bring life to the human experience. whether the artist is aware of what they're doing or not. It is through art that we experience worlds that would have otherwise been completely alien to us. The experience of delving into the world that an artist creates will, without a shadow of a doubt, inform to some varying extent the way that you perceive yours. Personally speaking, if one was to look at my life from the outside, I haven't experienced that much of anything. You see, I am devoid of what many might call a life. As of writing this, I'm still merely 1 and 8 years old. I've only really lived in one place with one culture, a rather strict one at that. However, as I got older, got a bit more freedom, I ventured, I explored, I traveled. The art scene became my oyster, which essentially makes the world my oyster. I sought out everything, traveled everywhere. Didn't quite happen all at once, but in great succession. It is amazing just how much your perception of life can be molded and influenced by the art you engage in, which is why I'm very deliberate about being diverse in what I consume and will always encourage others to do the same. Not just one genre, not just one country, not just one medium, not just one era. The power of art in capturing and in turn influencing how we perceive reality is one that I only have the highest respect for. And it is for this reason that I am greatly troubled when I see people who either don't know or simply don't care about the effects of art being the ones being in charge of its development and distribution. The manipulative nature of art is what makes art both so beautiful and so dangerous.
Ehi! Giù! Vieni giù! Giù definitivamente.
When you look at Victorious from the angle of being told from the perspective of narcissistic Horace Vegas, it goes kind of deep. The characters all fit nicely into the sitcom formula, but we're seeing them from the eyes of one person. As the show goes along, the characters seemingly lean more and more into these tropes. Kat seems to grow progressively more lost and confused with each season. Jade progressively goes from a lynch-loving alt-rock listening goth queen to an actual sociopath that attempts murder several times. And rape once. In fact, the show grows progressively surreal. This is a show where some casual jokes the canned laughter lose their mind to about stuff like pedophilia, murder, and, feet. As you know, this is the stuff that kids at home find funny. Alright, so I'm gonna need you to walk with me into hell for a second, even further than we already have gone. So please bear with me while I lose my mind for a little bit. Jade West is portrayed as this mean girl, right? She nags her boyfriend, threatens her friends with violence, especially poor little Kat, and is generally portrayed as being greatly disturbed mentally. But what if we look at this as a perspective of someone who doesn't like her? What do we see? Is her constant bickering with
He's got hair.
real? Or is this just what Tori wants to see? Is this Tori trying to justify her feelings towards
He's got hair.
or perhaps their relationship really is that toxic? Has it always been this way? Or is this strain caused by that one time Tori did casually flirt with him in the first episode? Speaking of the first episode, is Tori's sister really that annoying and tongueless? Why does nobody like her? Is she really this dreadful, or is this just a perspective of your typical sibling rivalry? Perhaps laced with a hint of jealousy. Remember, Trina was already in this cool art school despite seemingly having no talent. The show tries to explain it in one episode, but to that I say, why does everyone seem to see Trina as ugly? You are not telling me this girl is ugly. It's a lie. Stop! Does Tori have an inferiority complex? What the hell? I can't. This one's a stretch, but all this makes one wonder if maybe the whole show is a fantasy that Tori has conjured up because she's jealous of her talented sister.
What if it was me instead of her? Oh, what if I went to this cool art school? ever little of me.
Actually, that would explain how surreal the whole thing feels. And the fact that everything revolves around her. Our token black friend and really devoid of personality, or does Tori just have no interest in either beyond the fact that black friend's black and got hair, got hair?
Oh, she's got hair, even have hair? I mean, does
She's got hair.
even like Tori at all, or is this just another fantasy? We're viewing the whole show from the perspective of a narcissist. What's real? The most confusing part of all, though, is that Tori seemingly has a redemption arc. Or perhaps this is more of that characters becoming a parody of themselves thing, where in this case, Tori actually starts to become a good person, while everyone around her spirals. While watching the show, I always knew I had to make something about how dreadful Tori is because, like... However, I started to notice something strange. Tori seemed to be changing, or at least, her actions were. I've been running with the narrative that Tori likes
Hair.
and hates Jade for being with him, which, don't get me wrong, is 100% true based on how their dynamic is written. But there are several episodes where Jade and he are going through some stuff, and it's actually Tori who is the one rallying to help them out. And in fact, spoilers by the way, for a 10-year-old children's show that I would not recommend to my worst enemy, when they do eventually split up, it is actually Tori who does some Chad moves. Initially when Jade and broke up, I started hating Tori even more. But then in a scene when Tori and were about to kiss, Tori said no. She didn't want to turn around and do that to Jade, her friend.
Aww.
Because they do clearly have feeling each other, but Tori still does what she believes to be right by her friend, I was ready to say, alright Tori, I may have been wrong about you. She even went on to bring them back together. She actually makes quite a few moves like that later on. In one episode that would be greatly disturbing, even if this was not a literal children's show, Robbie is hospitalized and needs some blood. However, there is no one available with his particular blood type, besides Tori. So Tori, who has a play to do later, offers to give hers. Due to some nonsense, Tori ends up having to give him several pints of her blood. That was terrific to watch, but the point is that Tori is doing these surprisingly selfless things. It is especially shocking because the main trait that has defined her throughout the series so far, and what I've been attacking her for, was that she was self-centered. It just doesn't make sense. Victorious was very much still victorious, albeit a bit stupider than earlier seasons. I was trying to see if there was some way I could rationalize this shocking new behavior with some more 4D chess gaslighting. Maybe this is just what she wants us to think. Maybe the audience is being had. But no, that's stupid. The 4D chess has to stop somewhere, and that's when you have to step back. Really, look at the big picture. I keep asking myself these questions. Why was Tori being so inconsistent? Was I wrong before? No, I wasn't wrong. Was Tori experiencing character development? If that was the case, why did the show justify her actions before? What was going on? And it was only at the very end, after watching the most lackluster, anticlimactic, mid-empty feeling series finale that I have ever seen, it hit me. Tori isn't evil. She can't be. She isn't anything. I was reminded of the initial thoughts I had when I watched that first episode. I'd been focusing on the first part of that thought, but not the second. Tori is literally evil. Why is the show trying to frame it like she's not?
They sure work hard, don't they, honey?
Yeah? I hate to see them work so hard.
Yeah, me too. Let's go around back where we can't see them.
Gee, we ought to do something, Fred. Okay? How's about taking that? I got a better idea. Let's take a Winston break.
That's it. Winston is the one filter cigarette that delivers flavor 20 times a pack. Winston's got that filter blend.
Yeah, Fred. Filter blend makes the big taste difference, and only Winston has it up front where it counts. Here, ahead of the pure white filter. Winston packs rich tobacco, specially selected and specially processed for quick flavoring.
Victorious is a production. It is a production made by Nickelodeon using their head honcho Dan Schneider, which aired from 2010 to 2013 as a direct response to what Disney Channel was doing. If you by any chance remember this particular period in history, the late 2000s to early 2010s, Disney found a formula for their little television channel. This was the time when Disney had just developed their formula for manufacturing pop stars out of children for mass profit. The Hannah Montana era, the High School Musical era. Disney Channel found the lucrative idea to commodify and milk the idea of celebrity and stardom, using young girls to create superstars out of them while they rake in the profit from merchandise, TV viewership, and whatnot. They, of course, also made sure to propagandize the kids at home into wanting to become pop stars themselves, promising them this apparent glitz and glamour if they potentially joined them. I remember quite some time ago, the last time I visited America. I was quite young, and I actually remember hearing an ad on the radio that was calling for potential child actors to be like the ones that they see on television. I remember it stuck with me so much because I realized a couple things. The fact that the industry I cared about so much would be significantly more in reach had I lived on different soil, and just how ubiquitous the idea of Disney Channel is, as well as the fact that most children my age also wanted to some extent to be like the ones that they saw on screen. If you, like myself, grew up in this particular era, the fact that almost all the live action sitcoms were about some pop star actor or aspiring pop star slash actor should now start to make sense. They realized what Disney Channel was doing and wanted some of that sweet, sweet pop star money. Victorious, when examined from this angle, starts to make a bit more sense. This isn't a conversation about art, this is a conversation about business. You know, it actually used to be illegal to advertise to children. Victorious is propaganda in every sense of the word. What's worse, it's lazy propaganda. Taurus Vegas is the hero of her world and everything revolves around her. This is because every part of the show is framed in an attempt to make Tori look as aspirational as possible. Victoria Justice was set up to be the next big pop star. Not only that, but she would sell a dream to the kids at home, then encourage them to follow it. So the show essentially had one single goal in mind. Make her shine. She's the protagonist. Make her a stand-in for the kids at home. You want to be her. You want to live her life. Follow your dreams. Ideal if your dreams are fame and stardom. We can give you that dream. The world is yours because that's what we're offering you. Soon you'll be everybody's fascination. I don't think the show is intending to be a narcissist simulator. I don't think that Tori is supposed to be evil. I'm afraid the truth may be more boring, insidious, and frankly more predictable than that. After all, what's the ultimate goal of a business? Say it with me, children.
Money.
Victorious has many problems. I briefly mentioned a few of them, but I haven't really dwelled upon some of the really bad stuff too much, like the casual racism, foot stuff, yada yada yada. I do think that's someone else's job, but it really is just astonishing how many things are not right about the show. Especially because it's made for such a young audience. Maybe not necessarily children, but even preteens and early teens. It's very disturbing. Like, honestly, some of the show's grossest traits wouldn't have been as bad had the characters been older, as well as the demographic. Some of the stuff they are having these kids on screen do and sell to the ones at home is just mind-bogglingly bad. Some of this stuff genuinely made me sit down and ask myself how this made it to television. But what hurts me so much is that so much of this is purely incidental. This is just what happens when you have morally questionable characters working with and creating things for children. Every time the laugh track runs after Robbie gets bullied, or the characters talk about storing things in their bra, the show, my god. That's just a part of the deal. That's just a part of the deal, and they get away with it.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
They still get away with it because children just eat it up. And they know that children will just eat it up. And in the end, all that matters is the money. I mean, they're playing us all now, aren't they? As the corporations and platforms in charge of distributing media increasingly discourage the artists from creating good art and motivate them to get the bag, make content, push products, whatever you call it, these things are liable to slip through. The studio heads and network execs, social media algorithms don't care about your well-being. Every decision they make, good and bad, seems to primarily be done with profit in mind. This covered both good things like pushing for diversity and representation, or in business terms, appealing to more consumers, as well as things like needlessly sexualizing characters in your teen drama, or in business terms, grabbing the attention of the consumer. They want your money, and however they can get it, they will. There is no humanity to be found here. You are not a person, you are a consumer. There are no artists, there are content creators. As consumer culture further and further becomes ubiquitous and the lines between fiction and reality in media become blurrier and blurrier than ever, what does this do to our minds? We all take on these characters assigned and influenced by our experiences and the world around us. Your whole perception of life can be dramatically different depending on what your feed for you page or recommended tab looks like. Think about that for a second. Shows like Victorious and the whole High School Musical era exploited children both in the audience and infamously those on screen as well. It is because they could and they can. It's not like the internet's any better. In fact, it's worse. It's like way worse. If you've been on YouTube for a while, you probably heard of stuff like Elsa Gate, Father Finger, that grotesque stuff, which is still going on, by the way, if you look for it. Even on the less evidently disturbing side, you have the J stations, the materialist vlogger types. There's just so many people out there who figured out just how easy it is to exploit children, and they will. Them kids will stare all day long at anything shiny. But what's this ultimately going to do to them? And how they see the world? I'm Gen Z. I've already sort of accepted the absolute number that's been done to my attention span, and the fact that the internet has become not even an addiction, but rather an actual part of my body at this point. What's going to happen to those below me? Due to people do the most asinine things just to get the bag. Am I crazy for thinking that that is more than slightly evil?
Look, I just want to say, you guys make me sick.
Why?
'Cause you're all great looking and talented and popular, I mean, you guys star in every play at this school. And you sing all the songs. And you do all the talking in class. You guys have it all. And you're really worried about which one of you has the most followers?
Sinjin is unironically my favorite character from the whole show. He is at least presented as a demented, creepy, socially awkward individual who I would imagine has been pepper sprayed on more than one occasion. He is a little different, or at least that's how Taurus Vegas views him. The episode towards the end of the series, which, interestingly enough, was the final episode that was filmed, though not the last episode that aired, has a scene that is inarguably the greatest single minute of the whole show. The episode features Tori and her friends doing all sorts of things to get more followers than Tori's sister, who, remember, we're all supposed to think is a loser.
I'm not usually invited to the main people's houses. So, what do you need?
Tori gets Sinjin to help her get more followers, and he agrees, simply out of excitement that he was considered. However, in the end, Tori and her friends are still unsatisfied. It reaches a point when they all sit down together and muster the brain power to ask themselves how it was that Trina got all those followers in the first place. And the homie Sinjin, who happened to be passing by, calmly tells them exactly how it went down. Turns out that Trina had asked Sinjin to bot her account in order to bump up the followers, and he agreed just so long as she teaches him how to jump rope. Naturally, Tori asks why he let them run around making fools of themselves, to which, in what I believe to be the only time a character has ever broken through Tori's lens and their true words are said, he tells the whole group off for how narcissistic and egotistical they are.
Yeah, you feel the shame? 'Cause you should feel the shame.
King! I see Sinjin to simply be what, in Tori's mind, the average person outside of her friend group is like. He is the random person. The episode ends with the gang failing their assignment to make a short film. They had slapped it together last minute after blowing it off for their little follower race. The teacher claimed it was the worst short film that she had ever seen. That is how the episode ends. Victoria Justice, bless her heart, obviously did not become the big pop star the network was building her up to be. It was, well, I'm sure I don't need to tell you how that turned out, do I? The network tried their best not to let us realize how much better both she, Liz Gillies, and actually pretty much everyone else in the show who sung or danced were than Victoria, by trying their darndest not to let them sing at the same time, or when they do sing, they only do backup words played off as a joke. Quentin Reviews speaks more about this as well, along with a lot of other things in his epic couple of videos, but I think this is just poetic to the show itself. Victoria's failed. The Joe character won. The show was a big propaganda piece, and it ended in failure. Perhaps there is a silver lining in there somewhere, though I can't imagine how it would feel for a young woman to bear the weight of this tragedy. When you type in Victoria Justice to YouTube or Google, it won't take long to see people ridiculing her or claiming beef with, or otherwise comparing her to Ariana Grande. The network used her, failed her, and cast her aside only for schmucks like me to talk about how poetic it is. It's not funny. Don't laugh. I said don't laugh. How would you feel if you were in her place? Stop it. It's not funny.